Welcome everyone. Hello. Sorry, little beige background. It's 6 a.m. here, and I'm in my brother-in-law's spare bedroom. So good place to start. But I'm glad you're here. We're here. Felt sorry for seeing Ermund with no sun for the last month. Hopefully this lightens up your day somewhat. So to present to a technical audience. Now I highlighted technical because it's slightly different than when you're doing normal presentations to more of a marketing audience where people it's more about a sale than trying to transfer technical information. So take these things with a grain of salt. This presentation has literally taken me 30 years in the making. 30 years ago, I was in a master's program and I had an English teacher who at the time said things that were like crazy talk, like you will spend your career writing emails. And we're like, what's an email? And that you should flip your presentation totally upside down. When you write an email, the most important thing is in the top, not on the bottom. You don't lead to the answer. You start with the answer, and then you give supporting information if you want it. Well, to me at that time, that was heresy. But she was my professor, and I even went to other professors of English and said, what is she saying? And they're like, well, she's a little weird, but I think that's the way things are going. And they've really turned out that way. This was pre-SMS, and now people are used to getting information really, really short, fast. So the idea is, how do we get information that might be very technical, difficult, hard, transferred to our audience, whether if we're teaching or just giving a presentation, as efficiently as possible. Now, it's going to sound like a lot of rules, and I kind of wrote them as rules, but for most rules, they're made to be broken. But when you're in the beginning, you're just, a Padawan and you want to learn, follow the rules until you know how and why you personally want to change them, and then feel free to break the rules. They're just there as a guideline. So a little about me. I do this, and it's just a slide, so you don't need to follow or read anything. So from housekeeping, yes, and thank you, Heather. I don't think you did this on purpose, but thanks for not saying you're going to be getting the links and the video out, so that I could say you're going to get the links and the video out. And on the last slide, I'll show a QR code of where you can download not just the slides, Heather will be taking care of that, but an actual 28 page document on all the stuff that I'm talking about. So, like they alluded to, tomorrow morning, bright and early, we're starting up the WLPC registration. We normally sell, 85% of the seats within a couple hours. So if you really want to pick your sessions that your deep dive session or your boot camps that you want and get a slot, try to get in early. I also just put on the side here a little bit about how you might want to present as well next year. You submit a call for presentations when we send that out, and then we send that and have the audience vote. And then based on the votes, we assign those with the highest votes get the highest amount of time. Now, in addition, we had over 60% this cycle, people who didn't get a time slot. Now, that doesn't mean that your topic wasn't valid and useful, and we want to hear it. What it just means is we don't have enough time. Over 1 in 5, almost 1 in 4 of attendees of the conference are presenting or teaching. So it's still a big percentage, but we just don't have enough time for everyone to present. So this year we're offering a professional recording studio on site for those of you who had a great idea that you would like to present, but didn't have enough votes to get a time slot. So we'll fill that in. We'll add those to the conference website as well as to our YouTube channel. So on to the topic at hand, technical audiences. Again, a little warning, this isn't applied to all audiences, though I do think in today's world, with the speed of how things are going, these ideas will be effective in presenting to anyone. First of all, this is not on how to develop a presentation. There are lots of books you should look. I suggest Googling something like how to prepare a TED Talk, and there's probably 20 books that would help you there. If you have voice issues, and that's okay, you can overcome them. In fact, all the things I'm talking about are things that you can learn and practice and get good at. You should study how to develop slides. This topic today is more about the delivery side of it. And like anything in life, it's practice, practice, practice is how you're going to improve. Oh, these are just tricks, tips, hints, things you might want to try. They're not hard and fast rules. Okay, a couple of them are hard and fast rules. You have to follow them. But this is more on how you're going to deliver. So let's move forward. Begin with the end in mind. And some of you are Stephen Covey fans and you recognize this term. Before you start, figure out what your objective of the presentation is. What are you trying to get the audience member to do or say or change or think? And tacitly stop, think, ask yourself some of these questions and build your presentation so that at the end, they've done whatever you wanted them to do. It's not about you just, oh, I get to talk. It's what do you want the audience members to affect when you're done, and then target that around that. Again, this isn't a presentation development course or ideas. I'm just saying start there, and then you'll have a better touch in what your attendees are actually doing and seeing. I think when you're talking to a technical audience, evidence is most important. So find the thing you want to convey, come up with an experiment, do the experiment, and deliver the results of the experiment. People who have technical backgrounds love data. So if you can come up with a data-driven answer, wonderful. Now, the difference is, and this is where it comes back to your old academic learning. You had been taught hypothesis, then we experiment, then we find the results, and then we come up with a conclusion. And I'm not disagreeing, you still need to do that. It's the correct way. But when you're presenting, lead with the conclusion. Just jump right in, hit the conclusion, and then take a little time to show your results. And the hypothesis and the experiment, we don't need to hear them. You can put those in your documents that you give as a handout after your presentation. You don't have to do it that way. Many people think you have to build up to this grand conclusion. You don't. Start with the conclusion, hit it hard, and then I get people all the time who say, I had this great presentation, but it's going to take 45 minutes. And they only get a 10 talk. And they're like, how am I going to possibly fit it in the 10 talk? And the answer is, give us your conclusion. That will fit. And then what people will see is your skills and that you had the data-driven answer, and you'll get more votes for the next time around. Yeah, this one gets a lot of people upset when I say it. I'm like, don't waste time on your introductions because nobody cares. Yes, we care about you personally, but as a presenter, it's hard to come across being, yes, this is who I am. I'm a big, yeah. One, you could have someone else introduce you and have all the fluffy words about you, or you can not do it at all. Have a single slide, because one, people can always read faster than you can talk. Put your credentials on the slide and move on. It is extremely obvious, having attended literally hundreds and hundreds of presentations in the last couple decades. It is extremely obvious when someone knows what they're talking about. I don't need to have them say, oh yes, David Coleman started here and he's like, I mean, David Coleman's good. We don't need to have someone tell us that in advance. So on your own, yeah, and I know this is another one of those academic things. You were taught how to do things in school, but we're not there anymore. Another one that people get stuck on, it's don't set the stage. And in marketing, you set the stage all the time. That's what you're trying to do. You're trying to explain to an audience who doesn't understand your technology, your solution, your idea, and you want to get them to understand, this is so important. So you start with BYOD. That's when someone brings their own device. And when they do that, it's going to, and you go through the problem set. When you have a technical audience, they're living the problem day in and day out. And you repeating it to them just makes you look pretty stupid in their eyes. They're not going to listen to the other things you have to say, even though they're important, because you didn't pay attention to your audience's skill set. So I'm not saying never set the stage, though I probably lead that direction. Just start right in. Now, if you're presenting perhaps for a tech field day and you're a new entrant and it's tech field day and not mobility field day, so there's a wide variety of presenters, you might want to say, we're in the AI space, get a little bit of focus before you start. But you don't need to reiterate any of the terms. Your audience should know the terms that you're dealing with. Another big one, and this is a pet peeve of mine, and it comes from having multiple people come to us at WPC, and they want to see their speaker notes. And in front of at WPC and at many conferences, there's what's called a confidence monitor. It's a screen that faces the stage rather than the other way around. So whoever's on the stage can look down and see their slides. We get people who are like, but I don't want to see my slides. I want to see my presentation notes. And the problem with presentation notes, you shouldn't use them, but you shouldn't use them during your delivery. I think they're great for development. They give you lots of core concepts, and that's where you put notes and you're thinking about ideas. I have another slide in a minute. Don't use these as your handout. A lot of people are lazy and they have their slide and their notes underneath, and that just becomes the handout rather than treating the handout as something a little more special. So copy paste the notes, build a separate handout. If you practice with your presentation notes, it's like the dumbest thing you can do, because then you just practiced that you had to have your presentation notes. And if you have to have them with you all the time, then you're going to be up on stage and you don't have them there. The confidence monitor isn't showing what you want, and then you get all flustered. A better answer, just know your presentation. You should be able to see just the slide and talk to it rather than having to read things. This one's kind of self-obvious. Slides should be visual and not textual. And here's just a copy. I found this very bad slide characteristics. But we know if there's text on the screen, a couple of things are going to happen. One, the audience will outread you. The audience can always read faster than you can talk. So no matter how fast you talk on your slide, they're already ahead of you waiting for you to catch up. And now it's extremely boring of them going, yeah, he's just reading the slides. So one help is don't put a lot of information on the slides. Don't use that as the textual delivery. There's other methods. You can use a handout afterward that has all the details that needs to go on there. So one, don't do it because it's a temptation. Two, because they can always read faster than you, what's the point? You are the presenter. You're presenting you and your ideas and your thoughts. The slides are supposed to support you, not the other way around. Too many people start their presentations with the slide deck as the delivery method, and that's where they put all the information, and then they stand up there and they look stupid because the slides have everything they would have said anyway. Make your slides visual. They're to support you. You're the one doing the presentation. So this is a hard, fast rule. Never, ever, 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 ever read from your slides. It's boring. It's stupid. You'll get downgraded. People won't like it, and it's not a good presentation. Again, they read faster than you can. So don't do it. It's a very simple thing. Just don't do it. You can save it by not putting a lot of text on your slides, but just don't read your slides. I've had people who have memorized their entire slide deck word for word, and then it's like, oh, I know my material. True, but so did everyone else about 30 seconds before you did. So don't ever read your slides.
I have a tip for that one too.
Yeah, go ahead.
One thing you can do, because I think it just feels natural for people to start with presentations where they're just putting in all their notes on the slide, and that's what they're going to say. So if you do that, cut all those bullets from the slide, paste them into the notes area that no one can see, and then put a visualization there, and those bullets now become the notes that you use to develop the talk, and then eventually get rid of them, right? And do it by memory. But your slides are not speaker notes. They're a visual for your presentation. Yeah.
Exactly. Thanks, Jim. That was good. We love demonstrations. Demonstrations rock. Live is better than recorded if we can pull it off. because we love demonstrations, and I think part of that's human nature, that you're a lot more credible when you're showing your product than when you're talking about your product. We can see it does what you say it does. It also gives you a chance to share your energy about, I really look, I can make this do this cool thing. And that energy is palpable and people feel it. Sometimes you might need a recorded demo. I'd like to think that more of a backup than your primary delivery method. But there is one time where that might be useful, and that's when things take a long time. So there might be something where you click and it takes 47 seconds before the answer comes back, or some of them are even longer. And so you might record those pieces and then shrink the time, do a time lapse on it. It helps to either have a clock so everyone can see it go really, really fast, or there's a timestamp when you start, a timestamp when you end, and you actually say, this took 2.5 minutes. I didn't want to waste your time, so we gave you a recorded one. You can pull those kind of things off. No one wants to sit and look at a blank screen for a long time, but we do love seeing demos, and it's a little gutsy. It shows you know what you're doing, and you get a lot of credibility coming off of that one. Another pet peeve. Now, I wear glasses, and without them, I have a hard time seeing. And it's been that way for a long time. A lot of people are sitting, this far away, just no more than a couple of feet away from their screen while they're doing a presentation. And they definitely develop their presentation sitting so close. The problem is that's not what your audience members see. You could, next time you're at a conference and you see a slide and you sit on the back row and you can read the letters, go up and ask, what was the font you used? What was the size font, so that you know a limit? There's some rules about, use nothing smaller than 30-point type. And I'm not into that level of detail, but just realize people need to see what you're doing. If you're going to do a demo, zoom way in, way closer than you would think. Kind of like this guy in his magnifying glass. It's not comfortable when it's you that close, but when people are sitting on the back row and they want to see what you're doing and you have focus, you're focusing and you want them to see what you're looking at, then you kind of have to zoom in. If you don't, people lose their attention. And the whole purpose of a lot of these tips are keep focus, make sure that the attendees are listening to what you're saying and following along. And that's where we get the most technical content transferred between the presenter and the attendees. And this one's going to sound funny. Don't use a laser pointer. And the important word here is laser. We've had laser pointers for a long time. I picked up some nice laser pointers for all the ECSE instructors. They're like $7 a piece, and I don't think they use them as laser pointers. They just have a nice remote that every time you push it, it causes a spike in the 2.4 range on a spectrum analyzer so you can see it. They are remote, they're wireless, something's going to happen, and you need a clicker. You need the ability to go forward and backward. But what you don't get with the laser is the ability to highlight what you're looking at. Specifically for WLPC, we have 2 big screens on either side, 2 little ones a little closer, and none of them can take a laser. So in fact, even to see them, you have to walk to the front of the stage, turn around, lean back and point. And even if you get a nice bright green laser and you hit the screen, only half the room can see it. And definitely it's not in a recording. If you're doing remote, like a webinar or something, any laser you point on your screen has nothing to do with what the end people do. The answer, though, is they do make, I think Spotlight's the name of one. In the notes, when you see this at the end, you'll see a couple of brands and names that I recommend for this. And instead of using a laser, it highlights the screen somehow. There's a variety of ways you can do that with a circle, bigger or smaller. You can have something brighter or weaker. In post-production, you can also do the same type of thing. But what we want is we want the attendees' focus to be the same place as the presenter's focus, especially in demos. When you're saying, I'm going to go here and click, and you know what you're doing. You're moving your mouse, you're looking over someplace. They can't see your eyes and the same screen you're looking at the same time and make that. So they're waiting to see something change on the screen. And by the time they changes, they missed how you got there. So just change up from a laser pointer to a presentation remote and you'll have a lot better answers. This one for me is non-negotiable. You control your own flow. You're the presenter. You wrote the slides. You practiced with the slides. You did all that. No one wants to hear, next slide, please, ding, or some method where someone else is controlling the slides. That's very, very difficult to deal with. So have a clicker. If you don't need to do the highlighting, you don't need a highlighting clicker. You should have a clicker that can go forward and backward. And I like one that can go into blank. When you're in presentation mode and you hit B, it blanks the screen. It has an amazing effect for attendees because they're like staring at the screen and it, doof, gone. And of course, the next thing they do is they look at the presenter like, what's up? And now you have their dedicated, focused attention. Obviously, don't overuse this ability, but it does give you a chance to bring all of the attendees back and focus for a little bit. Whatever remote you get, test it. Make sure you're really good at all its functions. Now, this one is something that Heather is really good at and that Seven Signal webinars have done a great job on. If you know people are going to ask questions, and they will always ask questions like, can I get the recording? We'll be sharing the slides. Or in the class, where's the restrooms? Will we have food later? My tummy's hungry. All of those seemingly trivial questions, answering them proactively isn't about, oh, we have to take care of them. It's they're not going to give you attention. If they're sitting the whole time going, oh, I want that slide. Should I get out my phone and take a picture of it? Or am I going to receive it? Should I get up and go to the bathroom now? Or is it going to last longer? If there's food coming, should I eat a snack out of my backpack or can I wait? Those kind of seemingly trivial things are the ones that make people's minds go elsewhere. And you want them focused on what you're talking about. Thus, give them answers. And if those answers can't happen up front, they can relax and know, okay, I can hold it till this, I can do that. I don't have to worry. I need to take a picture, and they can focus on your actual presentation you're giving. Now, this next one's probably more for vendors than it is for you as an individual presenter. But you might be tasked with a presentation sometime, and you're not the best person. What you want for a technical presentation is not someone in sales or marketing. Sorry, Jim. Wait, you're not in sales and marketing?
Hey,
right?
Come on, I'm an engineer.
You're an engineer. Heather's waving. Yeah, that's me. This should be obvious, but if you're giving a technical presentation to a technical audience, you should use a technical person. Someone who's more technical, more understanding of that actual subject matter than your audience. The problem with most companies is the people who give the most presentations are those people who have a sales or marketing job because that's their job and they do it a lot more and they're really slick at it and they say all the nice words. The problem is for a technical audience, technical people can sense that in a heartbeat that the person talking has all the fancy words because they heard someone else use them, but they use them in a slightly weird order, as in they don't like if they say BYOD, but they say BDOY or something. I mean, it's kind of there, but kind of not. Or they say, yeah, our solution does this. And you're like, no, it doesn't. Now, an engineer won't make those kind of mistakes. Engineers might not be the best presenters, but for a technical audience, they're probably your best bet because they'll be able to get across their energy because they use that. That's another thing. If you have someone present, please have someone present who uses it, who doesn't just talk about it, but they use it all the time. Well, it's early morning for me here, 6 a.m., sun's not even up yet, but your energy should shine through. There's other places you can go read and find books about how to get that energy coming across. It's you get your body open, move your hands, keep your elbows out rather than next to your body, stand, smile, all those kind of things. And you can go study on that. The most important thing for a technical audience is your technical skill. If you understand the product or the solution or the idea or the concept you're trying to teach, and you care about it, the energy just comes through because you really like this stuff, and there it is, and it goes away. So don't fake it. I'm not saying smile, we're all happy. It's if you like what you're doing, that's going to come across. And so I'm suggesting feel big about it. If you're on stage, the bigger you are, the more big movements. And if they don't feel comfortable for you, fine. It's okay. Get over it. Just still do it. The difference is we see ourselves from our point of view, and I would never make big movements or pause and look when I'm in a one-on-one. But when you have hundreds of people watching you, you're kind of small on stage and you have to get a little bigger. And thus the energy needs to be extra high so that people can get a feel for that. Again, another one, don't forget, just be presentable as much as you can. I'm not saying overdress, but dress. You know, I'm like, collars are kind of a nice thing if you're going to be presenting. You could be Fernay and always wear a tie. He always comes across nice. But part of it's the posture and it's the confidence that comes. And if you don't really feel confident, fake it. It's okay. But that comes across to your audience when they're watching you. Now, oh, sorry, not that slide rule. This slide rule. Rules for slides, not slide rules. A really good presenter named Guy Kawasaki. He was an evangelist for Apple, like when back in 1984, 85. He was great. I've seen him present many times. He has this 10, 20, 30 rule. No more than 10 slides, no more than 20 minutes, no more than 30-point font, no smaller than a 30-point font. Yeah, those are useful, but you might have a 30-minute or a 1-hour presentation slot you have to fill. So you don't always do that. I think you should have enough slides to convey the topics you want. You might spend a lot of time on your slide development having builds. So it's one slide and you add pieces to it and you reveal information along the way. If you have a lot of bulleted information, some people say, put one bullet and then you click, you get another bullet, you click, you get another bullet. That's because they're lazy. They want to use the slide as their presentation notes, but they know you read faster than they do, so they want to pace it, so you have to stay with them. And that energy just makes your audience go, "Rrr." So yeah, don't do that either. But I do suggest studying. There's lots of books. I probably have 20, 25 books on presentations in my library right now because that you learn new things from them. Study from others as you're watching someone else give slides. Like, I like that. That was a nice transition. And then follow along and follow what they do. Now this one, your voice is your power. Yeah, that's where the energy comes across. It is the delivery method you're going to be using to transfer information from you to your audience. Things you can change, you can practice. You can, I mean, if you have, like, I have a naturally high voice. If I'm on a podcast, I'll use a mic really close and I can get nice and low. Get better microphones. But use things like pause, cadence, speeding up, speeding down. Now, when I say speed, I'm also saying speed does not equal energy. Just because you can talk really, really fast doesn't mean that means you have energy. Energy can be really strong and yet quiet. But your voice needs to not be monotone, not talk the same speed. People get bored. And again, all of these have to do with keeping attention on what's happening, which leads to speed. Speed has, I've got this broken down into two sections. First section, if you're a non-English as your first language, slow down. Now, some people who learn a second language can lose their accent from their native tongue, and they can speak as fast as they want. Some people are speaking in a second language, and give them a break. It's hard. I've had to learn a second language. It's not easy. And so they bring with them an accent, and that's also not bad. It just is. It's kind of like I have to wear my glasses. I wish I didn't have to wear my glasses to present. It would be easier and nicer, but you are teaching in a different language. That's okay. You should slow down And here's a trick to figure out how slow you should talk. Take your topic and one or two slides and meet with some people who are native English speakers who don't understand your accent. And have them sit in front of you and give your presentation at normal speed and have them raise their hand every time you say a word or a term they don't understand. The problem is with accents is when you have an audience member who has to stop and decode it and say, wait, what did he say? You're already a sentence or two ahead, and then they're trying to understand what you said words ago. And by the time they catch up, they've lost the piece in between. An example of this, I was in Scotland, and I teach pretty fast. I talk pretty fast, and I was going, and anytime they asked me a question, I had to have them repeat it 2, 3, sometimes 4 times for me to get, and they're speaking English, but I don't know if you'd really call it that. But when they would say something, I would have to listen really hard because they have the wrong emphasis on the correct syllable. It's the sounds there. Like I had a teacher once who said Rebecca, and he kept using his word Rebecca, and I had no clue what it was. And finally, at a break, a couple of us went up and said, "You've been talking about Rebecca all morning. What's Rebecca?" And he goes, "Oh, it's the name of my secretary." I'm like, "Oh, you mean Rebecca?" And he said, "That's what I said, Rebecca." But he was using it in a way that it didn't decode in my head. So slow down and make sure that your audience can understand what you're saying. And again, nothing wrong with that. We like people from different cultures and different backgrounds to be able to present to us because they have different ideas. It's great. On the other hand, if English is your first language, speed up, crank that little baby up. You should even practice to get 20, 30, 40% faster. Have a one-page document that you read and time it, and then read it again and keep trying to get up to that 20 or 30%. The reason, and this comes from a public speaking class I took probably 40 years ago, that was humans understand speech faster than we can say it, which means if you talk even normal speed, there's gaps in between your words and gives people time to go and daydream and do other things. If you talk really fast and you're staying focused, they have to hang with you and not have time to go and be distracted. Another wonderful one here, and this one's just a short slide, use analogies. Now, I'm not telling you what type of analogies to use, but analogies help deliver difficult or concepts that are hard to understand. If you don't have anything else to tie it to, you can give an analogy to give this is to that. And hopefully your audience knows the first this, and they go, well, it's kind of like that, and I know this one, so then we can go that way. Picking your analogies, though, is difficult. Analogies, by definition, aren't perfect. They're not the thing you're talking about. But what they can be is close enough to make people not kind of freak out. Freak out, what I mean, sometimes people give analogies in technical delivery where the audience goes, yeah, I know it, and that's not it. You used the wrong analogy. Well, a cat is like a bear. You're like, well, no, they're not. Cats aren't like bears. If you were talking about fur, yeah, they're both furry. There's probably a better analogy if you're talking about furry. People see the one thing and go, it's not like the other thing. So spend your time and get some focus and then try them on other people to make sure that that analogy seems to work. You only have a limited amount of time. It might be 10 minutes, it might be 20 minutes, it might be 30, 40. I don't know what your time limit is, but stay within your time limit. Practice to stay within your time limit. Have enough slides that match the level of time you have. If you have questions like Q&A built in, like Tech Field Days have Q&A right into the format, make sure you take less time for your presentation part and build into your time slot. Say, oh, I need a buffer right here for questions. I don't know when the questions are going to come, but I can't fill my whole 30 minutes and answer questions at the same time because something's going to get shortchanged. Either you'll get upset because stop asking so many questions, I have content to give you, or you'll get to the end and your important things are dropped. Again, put the conclusion in the front, put your most important things in the front, and then have your support in the back. This one is like Analogies, but I think it's better. It allows you to do a couple of things. And this works in training, it works in giving presentations. What I'm talking about here is you're going to flip from I'm presenting something very important, technical, difficult. You better listen to every word I say because this is hard stuff. There's the data. And you back off and say, well, there was this one time at band camp, and all of a sudden the entire audience goes, oh, he's backing off and just he's only telling a story. So that heavy duty focus, I have to listen to every word, kind of relaxes in the audience members. They don't think I should relax right now. They just kind of back off a little bit and you start telling the story. And like good stories are like good jokes. They have a setup, they have a conflict, and then they have a punchline. What you'd like for your real world stories here is it's going to add credibility. Because you're saying, well, I was at, FedEx doing this one thing in their planes, and people are like, oh, he's been at FedEx. He was inside their planes. He was fixing this one thing. And they're like, oh, that sounds way better than in your introduction saying, well, I used to be at FedEx. So just move it over to the story. And you're in the story and set some credibility. You're doing the setup, and then you hit the conflict, and they had this big problem. And here's where real world stories are super important for presentations. The punchline is the part that swings around where they're all relaxed and hits them in the back of the head, and it supports the concept you just were talking about. You have a difficult concept, you let them back off and relax for a little bit, but then the story has to match. And the punchline has to be, and I used that piece of technology to solve the problem. What we found, stories are way stickier than content. And if you want the content to stick in your audience's mind, you need to wrap it around a story. But the story and the punchline doesn't make sense if you didn't have the concept up front. So you still have to teach the difficult concepts. You just can't rely on stories. But the stories can reinforce what's happened. And they add credibility as well. Now this one, again, should be super obvious. Get rid of all the distractions. Anything that moves in the background is distracting. Clutter in the background is distracting. Any sounds, any clicking sounds. I was in a class once and a guy had a couple coins in his pocket. He kept rubbing them together. Like everyone heard it and he didn't notice. And afterwards I said, why did you keep doing that? And he goes, I didn't do that. It was just an affectation he had. One thing today that you see a lot is fake green screens. Like it's something that's built into Zoom where you can say, blur my background. And so it kind of tries, but along your head, you get this little fuzzy part. It's movement. And as hunter-gatherers, when we see movement, our eyes just jump at it. So if you want your audience to focus, and you do, just get rid of them. Then they'll focus on you, they'll focus on your content, they'll focus on your slides. Another super obvious one, test your setup beforehand. I suggest not just testing it, but you bring all your own stuff. You bring your computer, you bring your presentation, you bring your own dongle, you bring your own remote, and it's a remote that you're used to and you know how to use it and go forward and backward. You might want to bring an AC adapter as well. I mean, at WPC, we put an AC plug right on the bottom of the lectern if people, for whatever reason, bring their laptop and it wasn't fully charged. As a minimum, bring your slides on a USB, and I recommend multiple copies, PowerPoint, Keynote, Google Slides, and a PDF version. So no matter what happens, you can just plug that in someone else's machine and you can be able to present. So it's not just testing your specific setup on site, it's being prepared for whatever things might happen along the way. I got this one from a friend, David Coleman. And David Coleman, you know who he is. You've read his books for years and years and years. And he says he's intimidated every time he walks into a room. But he just tells himself, don't be intimidated. Don't be intimidated. Because you know what? You are not the smartest person in the room. Accept it. Get over it. But what you are is someone who has prepared this specific presentation, and you know more about that than anyone in the room. Intimidation's in your head. It's not in the audience. So, okay, there might be in some people in the audience, depending on who you rubbed wrong that day. But don't feel intimidated. Now, I say don't feel, and my wife always tells me, don't tell people how to feel. Well, you might feel intimidated. Just don't act like it. Be confident. You're the one that's prepared, and it comes across in your delivery. Now, the last slide here has to do with references. Everything I've shared so far is about speed, efficiency, delivering, getting your information in their head as fast as possible. But there's a lot of anal people in engineers. As engineers, we like pride ourselves in finding the mistakes. Oh, you should have done this, you should have done that. And so if your presentation feels like you didn't leave enough documentation, any support, give it to the audience. Put it in your supporting documentation. Have a big long file there. Show the experimental data you used. Whatever you need to support your presentation, drop it down in the references. Don't lead with it. That's the old-fashioned technique of, I'm going to build up to the conclusion. You might not have time to hit the conclusion. By the time you get to the conclusion, they might not agree with you. Lead with the conclusion, give a little supporting evidence, but definitely put your evidence out there and leave it in your references. You can use QRL codes or URL shorteners so that people can just take a snapshot of the screen and download your information. So that's like really fast going through some, I don't know how to hit 30 slides or so on tips you can go through to improve your skill set in delivering to an audience. Now, I wrote this for WPC presenters. There's 70 plus that we'll be sending this to help them better prepare for their presentations. Conclusion. This is not anything you should use to develop your own slides. There are lots of sources to help you do that. And these tips are just tips. Take them with a grain of salt. It's up to you. The conclusion is you are the presentation. Do what you can to keep their focus, keep you focused, and keep all distractions out of the way, and they will be listening to what you have to say. And so to follow my own advice, here's my references. The slides are available for download from Heather. She'll be sending out an email. Same with the videos available as well. You can contact me at my email address, or there's a 27 how-to guide of the things I've covered at that URL. You can take a picture of your screen right now, or it's on the slides that Heather will be sending you. And tomorrow morning, registration for WPC starts. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Keith. That was awesome, and I think we've got a couple of good questions that have come in, so we'll tackle those.
I love doing presentations. I love doing presentations with you, Jim, because I never even think about the questions because I know you've got them all queued up.
I do. Yep. Maybe that's a good tip from us: is do your presentations if they're web-based, have somebody there to help you out. That's minding the chat. That's looking at the Q&A. That's queuing things up. That's telling you if your slides are advancing. All those things are really, really helpful. So, and I want to emphasize, I really like the point about send a technical person to present to a technical audience. Yes. They probably don't have the best presentation skills. They're probably not slick like Heather and others in marketing, and that can fool people that are non-technical, but engineers, we quickly sniff out if you have the technical skills, if you actually have worked with what you're talking about, if you've had hands-on experience. That's the number one thing, and that's where all the credibility comes from for us. So, sorry, Heather.
I remembered one more that
my strengths.
I wrote in the document, but I forgot to cover in the slides. Filler words. When you're talking with friends, you're sitting around in a group of people and you have a little stop and you give a little pregnant pause, someone else is going to insert really quick in there. So you have to fill the time or someone else will fill it for you. And so we've been trained from little kids that if you stop talking, your parents interject. And then as kids, you're talking with your friends, and if you stop talking, other people interject and you lose control of the media. Well, that's the way we say it. They end up just using filler words because you go, and you don't know what to say next. So you say, yeah. And they fill those filler words in for the reason that I don't want to lose control of the media. I haven't finished my thought, but I don't have the word right now, so I fill it. As a presenter, you don't have that problem. I can pause for 2 seconds. There's 300 people in the room. They're not going to go, and let me answer it. They are polite. They give you that time. So you can use pauses, even long pauses, and not have to resort to filler words. It's terribly uncomfortable. When you first start doing it, you're like, I'm standing here and no one's talking. And you put these big, huge pauses, and you know what? The audience doesn't notice. But if you revert back to your filler words, yeah, they're going to be noticed, and you just and it sounds like you know what you're doing. So go ahead. Any questions?
Yeah, I think that's a good one. Having a few pauses as I use some filler words here is no big deal when you're speaking. It gives you a chance to take a breath, and it might be a nice, like, natural break as you switch from one idea to the next. Take a pause, no big deal.
Yeah.
Audience questions first from I Ham. Hopefully I didn't butcher that name. But the question is around how to deal with technical troublemakers. So questions from, that they feel sort of target the technical aptitude of the presenter. And then sometimes, just paraphrasing here, interrupt you while you're presenting and maybe are a little bit off topic. Any tips on how to deal with those, Keith?
As the conference organizer for WLPC, we started out having questions, because that's cool. You want to ask questions. And then we even bought some microphones that come in these big boxes, big rubber things, and we'd throw them around to people to ask questions. Then we had 3 handheld mics, and we went to 4 handheld mics, moving around because you need the mic in order to record the question. And what we found, going back through slowly with the recorder and replaying it, is about 80% of all questions fit in that category. They were either someone pontificating, they didn't ask a question, they just wanted to get their 2 cents in on the recording in front of everyone else. They wanted to attack the presenter, or they wanted to disagree. And less than 20% of the time was there actually a question in there that needed clarification. So we've stopped accepting questions because most of the time they're not there. So I think that's a cop-out of an answer. We've, as the conference organizers, figured a way just to make it go away, but not including it. Other venues and other types of, like Tech Field Day, questions are a huge part of it. But that's also, I think, Tech Field Day takes an inordinate amount of time choosing their delegates to make sure they're not jerks.
Yeah.
But if you're a jerk asking a question, be like a stand-up comedian and just, be a jerk back.
Yeah.
Okay. I really didn't mean that. That was just a joke.
Well, you got to be in
Terrible
control.
joke,
Just, hey, that's not really related to what I'm talking about. Let's, follow up with me after the talk, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a good point, Keith, because, as a presenter, you've put a lot of thought into only conveying the information that's really relevant and important to your audience. But the questioner is just, something came to mind, and now they're just asking out of the blue, and it often isn't valuable to everyone else out there. Maybe
from a timing standpoint, we found we can get more content in the same amount of time by taking the questions out and then forcing the presenters to talk in 10 minutes. You can accomplish a lot of information transfer in 10 minutes if you throw the fluff out and there's no questions and you just start with the conclusions. So I think that's kind of how we got around that.
And maybe just a quick 30-second answer for Nick. He just wonders, any additional tips for delivering presentations via Zoom, Teams, or WebEx?
That one, just all distractions. Just get rid of anything that might be a distraction because people are focused. I got a really good camera back at the beginning of COVID, and thought I was doing really cool and had my library behind me, and I thought it was all pretty. And the comments were, hey, I've read that book. And people had turned their head sideways, zoomed in, and got off the spines the different books I had. That means they were not listening to me. And you'd be surprised how many people did that very thing. Or, oh yeah, you see people have Legos in the background. I used to do that Lego thing. So get it as focused as you can. I personally like, I mean, I'm not here now, but I like having a green screen on the background and then blacking it out or whiting it out. So it's not distracting at all. Of course, in the document you're going to download, there's a lot more on Zoom, how to not distracting, how to configure your Zoom to be as effective as possible. You're using a mic. Heather's not using a mic. You sound a little better. Heather sounds okay. The mic in front of you works really well to give your voice a better sound. I don't know if it's worth so I keep mine out just right outside the frame and use a different type of mic to do that. I don't see anything wrong with your mic being there because it sounds so good. So lights, camera, action. In fact, if you searched lights, camera, sound or something, I wrote a video on how to prepare your Zoom room.
Great. Thanks so much. And I think with that, Heather, we can transition over to Eric.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Keith. I feel like I'm slightly getting roasted. But in the best way, because you have no idea how many emails I get about my candle, about like things that are in my background. So it's definitely food for thought. Maybe I should clean it up around here. Yeah, nice cup. Go Brewers. Get plain cups, guys. No, I have to show off my homeland. But Eric, nice comfy. Gosh. Good to see another comfy. Yes.
Did I mention how comfy I am here today? Wow, just feels so good. All right, well, here you have it, guys. For the last couple minutes to go, it's time for 7 minutes with 7 Signal, where we take a little feature inside 7 Signal, unpack it, and show you how it can have awesome value. And I'll tell you what, let's pretend for a second. What if somebody came up to you and they said, hey, I want to know where the Wi-Fi is good. I want to know where the Wi-Fi is bad. And I want to know why. And I want to know now. What would you do? Well, let's take a look. We're going to go inside Mobileye and check it out. If you can see my screen, give me the thumbs up. All right. So here you have it, guys. Let's take a look. So let's just say that I've got these little point of sale devices that are in all these stores that I've got all over the place. And my big boss comes up to me and says, look, what's going on out there? You need to be able to quickly and accurately tell the tale. So here are my different stores. I'm scrolling down, a lot of yellow, which is just a warning, nothing to be concerned about. I get, whoa, excuse me, sir, but I believe I've identified a problem at store 790. Is that so? Well, let's click into it and let's see more detail. All right, well, I can see what network it's on. I can see who's having the device. And all of the analytics are done. All of the heavy lifting is done, and I can see immediately what the problem is. It's either a roaming coverage, congestion, or interference problem. We also have indications whether or not it's a gateway problem or an MCS problem, indicating overall poor quality. So you know what we're going to do? Now that we have this, let's just say the big boss man says, well, what kind of detail do you have in order to support that? I'm just going to click right into this device, the POS device, very important, and I'm going to see the story. I'm going to expand my little problems timeline, and there you have it. Coverage, coverage, coverage. All day and all night. The analysis tells me that the device is far away, and we look around the device on the same SSID, and everything else is far away too. Issue identified. We can now take steps in order to remediate. Isn't that nice? And I'll tell you what, guys, you know what my English teacher taught me when I was in high school? Pithiness is next to godliness. And I just want to remind everybody out there that while you and me, we can't see or hear Wi-Fi, but 7 Signal can. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Back to you, Heather.
Gosh, putting us right to shame with an excellent presentation. Great job, Eric. And of course, great job, Keith. Thank you so much for being here today. Always a fan favorite. Thanks to you, Jim. Thanks to 7 Signal for the awesome comfies. Hate to rub it in all of your faces one more time. I'll talk to them about what kind of giveaways we can do, but we kind of knew there'd be some backlash going into this webinar, but we couldn't help ourselves. But anyways, we will see you same time, same place next week, 11 a.m. Eastern. Thank you as always for joining us. We would not be here without you, and we will see you next time. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thanks.